folks. Welcome to our final Faith and Belief Luncheon of the semester. Many of you have been here many times, so you've heard this a lot. But this year, the Office of Religious Life and Campus Interfaith Board received a grant from the Interfaith Youth Corps to implement sustainable initiatives to address the cultural, political, and religious divides facing this country and to advance interfaith collaboration on campus. Hence, Faith and Belief Luncheons. I am excited to say that we got another scholarship to continue this next semester at least. So we'll just keep applying for money and keep trying to make this happen. So the Faith and Belief Luncheon, we hope, helps us to learn about the worldview diversity that exists on our campus from engaging in conversation and learning from faculty, staff, and students and their faith experiences. But we also hope that it helps you grow in your own faith and worldview as you learn from others. So we're going to begin the formal program in just a minute. First with Courtney Douglas. Courtney is a student, a senior. Are you also graduating in December, is that right? Yeah, so super exciting. And then Dr. Justin Lasser will follow after her. And then after they both speak, if you all have questions for either of them, they can hear us and you can just speak out loud to those who are on the Zoom. And other folks on Zoom, I guess I'll look up here. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you. Feel free to also use the chat if you have questions, and I'll pull it up right now so we can all see it. So you guys can all help me hold me accountable to answering any questions they have. And without any further ado, Courtney, actually first, let's give thanks for this time together. So we took some time out of your day today. I give thanks for our speakers who are allowing themselves to be vulnerable, to share a bit of who they are so that we might learn through their experience. I give thanks for Sodexo, for Manchester Dining, and for pulling together the food, for bringing it over here, for serving us so well. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity for us to learn with and from one another. So without further ado, Courtney, take it away.
Hello, everyone. As Becca told you, I am a graduating senior here just in a month. I am a biochem major and one of the few people that probably has never changed their major on campus because of stubbornness. So growing up, my family considered themselves Christian. We weren't really the type to go to church every Sunday. I think we only really went for like Grandparents' Day and Christmas and like special events that the churches were holding for our grandparents' sake. But like we weren't big on church on Sunday. We weren't super hardcore Bible readers. And my parents attributed that to the fact that when they were kids, their parents toted them to church every Sunday and Wednesday evening. And they kind of resented them for that, and they didn't want us to be the same way. And so, you know, as you grow older, you start questioning things, and you're looking at stuff, and you're curious, and you're wondering, is this how it all actually is? Like, is this right for me? Is this the path that I think that I need to follow? Is there more to the life than just what I've been told by my family? And so, funny enough, an ex-boyfriend and his mom actually introduced me to paganism and Wicca and that entire just encirclet of stuff. And so I'm looking into it, and like the more and more I read about it, the more and more it just made sense to me. A lot of it is respecting nature, respecting the world around you, doing unto others as you would have done unto you. You probably have heard of like the law of karma, and putting out into the universe comes back whatever you put out to you, 3-fold, 7-fold, 10-fold. Like there's all kinds of different ones. It just depends on what faith you are that determines the number, I suppose. And so start reading into it, and I start discussing with my parents, and they're just like, what 15-year-old is like concerned about what religion they are? And it was a point of contention for a little bit, and I just kind of just shut myself up because they had no interest in me discussing this. They were like, we're Christian, we're Christian, we're Christian. And it just didn't sit right with me. Monotheistic religions did not make sense to me. Because to me, I look around the world and I'm like, how did one person come up with everything we see. That is way too much creativity for one person. It seems more like a team project, and slacking off in some areas just wouldn't have worked. So I decided that I was going to read more into it, that I was going to study it a bit more. I didn't get as far as the type that does spells and that kind of stuff. I was more of the, okay, let's do yoga, let's respect nature, let's go immerse ourselves in nature, let's breathing exercises, let's be kind to other people because there's not enough kindness in the world. Trying to think of where else to go with this. I do have quite a few books on it, but like college kind of pulled me away from it a little bit just because of time constraints. And I do plan on reading more and studying more when I get more time after I graduate. But as of right now, I just see it as a more of nature was here before us. It will be here long after us. So we should respect it while we're around. This would be a lot easier if you guys were asking questions. And for those of you that are wondering, okay, so Christian family, Christian household, yada, 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 we live in the Bible Belt. How does that work? And the cool thing about paganism is it is very flexible. You don't have to believe in multiple gods. You can believe in one God. You don't have to believe in any gods. You can just worship nature. You can just focus on yourself and being kind to other people. It's extremely flexible. There are no constraints. There's no, you have to do it by the book. Anything else is wrong. There is no, this is the right way. This is the only way. Everything else is wrong. There is none of that. It's very much your own path. And like the biggest thing that it does center around is just be kind to others. Treat yourself nice. Treat everyone else around you nice, and the good things will come back to you. But the opposite is also true. If you're thinking bad thoughts about yourself, if you're thinking bad thoughts and doing horrible actions to other people, that's just going to come back to bite you in the butt. I do recall one little funny thing when I was first thinking about converting over to paganism, and I was at my grandmother's house, and I just happened to see a note that had questions like paganism in the Bible and is paganism Satan worship, and to me that made me kind of laugh because it's not, but I mean, to somebody who's very strictly Christian as my grandmother is, to them it probably seems like it, but I think what she has in her mind is like, you know, sacrificial offerings and dancing around fire naked in the middle of the woods, which I mean, for some people, the dancing around the fire and the naked in the middle of the woods is a thing. Not me. But hey, you do you, boo. But it made me laugh because I was like, you guys are like taking this a little bit too serious. I'm just trying to find the path that best fits me. And I think that's the biggest message for anyone that's like kind of questioning whether or not they're in the right religion is what makes you happy? What is the path that makes your soul feel fulfilled?
Well, thank you, Courtney.
Not a problem.
Love hearing from you. We'll do Q&A at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and invite Justin to come on up, and you can do it.
Should I come up here?
I think that's where the mic is.
Okay.
But you can ask like they can hear you.
Can you hear me?
They're
I can hear you.
Oh, thanks. Well, thanks for having me, everyone. Justin Lasser again, if you don't know me, most of you familiar faces. But feel like I'll begin at the end rather than the beginning. Mainly because I was just asked to write a piece about Jesus. I was walking my dog before I came here and thought, how the hell am I going to start? So I think this is the way I'll go. And then I'll talk about my background and how I got to this place. But you know, today we have perspective of the world that I find really problematic, but has only struck me as problematic in the past maybe 8 months. And that is what the ancients knew that we don't know. The world is not a mechanism or something to be studied, but is what the ancients would call theophany, which is the appearance of a God, or appearance of God. There is something about the sheer fortuity of being, that the world exists, you know, and I've lost the ability to wonder and or to be able to be astonished by the fact that the world exists. That just doesn't go away. Courtney had mentioned, could there be one God that creates this? And I would agree and say absolutely not, but that's not what ancients thought about the God, Theos, which is creation exists through God, not outside of God. Did we lose me?
Justin's voice sounds a bit funny.
How about now? Well,
A bit better.
a bit better. Oh, is this a mic or no?
Is it not?
I think it's a light. Where is the mic?
Is it in the computer? Is it in the light?
Is it in the light?
I have no idea. I didn't ask.
Can you hear me if I tap on this?
I have no idea. I mean, we've got this.
Well, we don't need to do that. We just found out where I need to speak, right? See, this is the light. Tina, are we saying anything better?
All the way back there. Can you say something about it? Maybe just shout.
Keep talking sane.
I think the mic is up there. Oh, okay. Oh, I got
Okay, I will get the preaching voice going. How about that? Okay. Okay. So the world as a theophany, as the appearance of God itself. And I think there is something incredibly ironic, also disturbing, in the fact that what the ancients had saw, and every great pagan faith, I'm talking in the kind of Greco-Roman world, is the appearance of a God, to see your God's face, a particular God. And it's usually like Apollo, right? Or like the book of Daniel. They see a man sitting up on a throne, right? And these angels are around him, the cherubim and seraphim, burning and going around. And that's what they want to see, giant feet. You ever read that? God's got giant feet. When we begin Hebrew Bible, remember how tall is God? Roughly 3 stories. And you can see that by their footprints in the temple. But here's what I find so compelling, is that in what I want to preserve is the God that they find at the end of the day has the face of a leathered skin, dark skin, crinkly hair, dark hair, looks more like an Arab than like me, and he has the width of urine, right? And so, like, this is the appearance of God. Can you think of anything more ironic, if not disturbing? And so, there is this famous phrase, and then I'll bring it back, in the Gospel of Matthew. And Jesus says to them, "Where were you when I was hungry? Where were you when I was naked? Where were you when I was homeless?" And they said, "We didn't know," right? He said, "When you didn't do it to the least of these, you didn't do it to me." So, in a deep sense, Christ has already returned. You just missed it. And I think that is the kind of irony that we would find as so contrasting between the light beam face of a giant God and a peasant from a town of 200 people from suspect background. I mean, I think that's extraordinary. Why would we think that the return of Jesus would be any different? And I think we miss it, right? So I remember when I was walking my dog, I wore this bracelet. Said, "What would Jesus do?" Did you go through that phase? You went through that? Okay. And I look back and I think, what the heck did that mean? Because certainly, I thought I believed in Jesus, but I could never follow. And I don't think that most of us would enjoy meeting him. Indeed, we put him in a prison with other children and locked him up because he crossed a border. Right? Or we put him on a stick in Mississippi. There's an incredible part in the 2nd century where Christians were being tortured, and a woman named Blandina is impaled. And presumably, as Irenaeus of Lyon looks and he points at her, he says, "Look, there is Christ." Notice he didn't say one like Christ, but literally, there is Christ. That is the kind of attitude that I think for our ethics is really, really important. We expect somehow, many Christians, North American Christians, that when Jesus comes back, he's going to be totally different. Right? So I think some of you here remember the time when I asked my class recently, do you remember the occasion where Jesus punched a woman? Or took up the first stone to stone her for adultery? Anyone remember that? Isn't the image crazy in your mind? It's silly, right, to imagine Jesus doing that. And yet, I had a student the other day say, and I said this a long time ago, God is love, but also just. We seemingly think that justice is violence. But the justice is already revealed. So there's a reason why the Christian faith is still so compelling for me, because it's so opposite of what we expect today. If you read Jesus' parables, they always imply or include a question, which is, what will the master do? Right? And sometimes we have strange interpretations, but it's pretty darn clear. Yes, I know my dog is being inappropriate.
I don't see everything you're saying, but I'm just watching it.
Oh,
He's
no.
just shooting his butt. I'll just make it feel okay.
When I was your age, I was at Gordon College outside of Boston. I grew up in Long Island, New York. Went to college to become a missionary. And I remember having a debate, or really I was just put in my place, by a person that was talking about Romans chapter 9, where God says, or Paul says, as a hypothetical, by the way, you should read the whole thing. What if God chose people for destruction? And I didn't have an answer. In fact, it was so opposite to what I ever expected. So many Christians think that love and justice are different things. But in classical theism, if God is simple, love and justice are the same. We've actually already seen it in the past 2,000 years of Christian history as a way of trying to repress this unbearable traumatic truth, is that we already know what to do, but we don't want to do it. And so belief, for me, when I was in college and the subsequent years in seminary, Belief was a defense against experience. Belief was a defense against responsibility. So little did I know, God appears to me every single day in the people that I walk past. Literally, and I am saying that literally. We are restricted experiences of an unrestricted truth. Like light that goes through a prism, that would be a classic way of thinking of the human person. Then, I'm going to throw him, there we go. So, when I was in college, and suddenly things started to change. I started to ask questions that I thought were inappropriate. And then I realized I didn't believe myself. I believed that I believed. So Courtney's talk really does, it resonates with me. When you think there is only one way, losing all these truths of love and compassion, God taking the form of a restricted human being and being executed. And he didn't slap them back, did he? I firmly believe you cannot call yourself Christian if you believe in heaven. Because by that, you just turn God into an utterly tyrant that would burn people forever. But why would you have more compassion than God? So, I started asking questions. I started realizing that what I thought I knew had like nothing to do with the ancient world. I've had a collective, progressive experience of amnesia, where I used to open up the Bible, perhaps you've done this, sitting by a little lake and just read it and say, there it is. Not learning about the honor-shame culture, not learning that prestige is more important than money in the ancient world. There's a time in the gospel where Jesus says there were two sons. And one came up to him and he said, go into the field and work today. Now he said to go, but then he didn't. Right? The second one came and said, no, I'm not going to go. And then felt bad and then went, right? And he says, which one is the better one? I know. The one that said, I will go and doesn't go, or the one that says, I won't go, feels bad, and then goes. In the ancient mind, it's very clear what happened, right? The first one is the good one, because he let him save face. And that's what I mean. Yeah, I see the eyes, right? So to learn about these cultural experiences, we find a Jesus that has very little to do with what we find to be good. And it's our culture that, our ideology that needs to shift. So those two things, right? Deep questions about who was Jesus, but also in that discovery of pursuing, finding a theology, the appearance of a God in the face of a peasant, an illegal alien. We don't hear that in our political discourse today, I don't think, right? Because people don't believe what they say they believe. And the recent election for me was that experience. People don't believe what they believe. They have identities. That's far more important. And they want to be different. My friend Bob Gilbert, who was on this call a second ago, there he is. I was reading, there was an anthropologist that said, and I think this sums up the chief teaching of the series, was he was in Alaska with an Inuit tribe, and he was coming back. He didn't catch anything, and one of the villagers gave him some fish, and he said, "Thank you." And he said, "Don't thank me. We're human up here. This day it's for me. The next day it might be you that has it. We're human because we share." Well, if you find any of the parables, there it is. It's about having enough and responsibility. So it took a long way to get to a place where I realized that my mom and grandmother were always right. Jesus loves me, yes, I know, or the Bible tells me so. I mean, not the Bible, but, tradition. I knew that forgiveness is better than retribution. Just knew that, intuitive. And it took me a long time to discover that simplicity of mind with a strong heart is much better than a mind that tries to conquer the world. When I was in college, I went to Russia for a year and studied there, and I found myself going to this little chapel, in a little Kremlin, in a city called Nizhny Novgorod. It was snowing. I just loved to go there. I don't know why. I was scared. I almost said a bad word. I was scared because literally the priest would come by, grandmothers, babushkas would tell me to stand up straight and didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to cross myself. You can stand up and you don't do the right fingers. This is the Orthodox Church. And yet I went back every day. There was something about mystery that I longed for. There was also something about not knowing, or knowing through unknowing. And that's the great discovery. Knowing by unknowing, which is, primordial in the Orthodox Church. I reconstructed my faith through the voice of the past, on the path, I guess, and recovered a sense of beauty. That's what I understand Christianity to be. Beauty, mystery, and the paradox of finding God in the very person that you don't want to talk to. If we can't live that, then what are we doing besides believing in order not to believe? So I have many students that say, I don't know, but let me ask my pastor. Notice that they do not believe. They believe in the other person's belief. And I share that. I've gone through that many times. But yeah, so this has been a transformative experience in the past months of recovering a sense of astonishment and wonder. And then realizing that, the scriptures are not inspired as such. They are inspired in the inspired reading. And that's what the church has always taught. So when you read those violent passages, right, and you don't know what to do with them, we have rabbinic and patristic or Christian interpretation for millennia that teach us how to do it. If God is love, doesn't have love, but is, it's a very simple solution. And that goes back to some of the origin of Alexandria and all of those that taught us. But again, the thing that I realized is that I didn't need to go to college to learn what my mom taught me so well. With that, I'm done.
Okay, would you like Tara and we got.
Oh, Tara Switzer? I don't know if I would let her in, but
I do.
Tara Smithson is in as such. They hate when I say as such, so I made sure to say that a number of times. Yeah. Thank you, Courtney.
All right, do any of you have any questions for either of our speakers? I would just say, if you don't know where the mic is, say it loudly and I might repeat it. And then Justin, if it's for you, you might want to come back up, and Courtney, you can unmute if it's for you. So, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, well, I kind of have both a comment and a question, but I think the greatest struggle for me is basically exactly what both of you said at one point, where Courtney was talking about how putting out goodness and the goodness back, adding it back is horrible. I have no danger. Yeah, that's the word. My brain's on. But versus just believing in forgiveness. So I've struggled with that for a while. I've been thoughts about how you can't believe your own Christian. I struggle with that too a lot. So I just was interested to have that. I was not expecting to have my entire questions today, but it's fine. But for your questions for you, how does paganism really relate to other religions?
You hear that, Courtney?
Partially.
How does paganism relate to other religions?
I mostly know how it relates with Christianity, specifically holidays. We actually just had one that Christianity is responsible for making as big as it is. So we just got done with Halloween. Some of you may know it as All Hallows. I call it Samhain. The word that you're thinking is Samhain. That's not the correct pronunciation. It's Samhain. But so a lot of the holidays that are Christian find their roots hardcore in paganism, because during the Anglo-Saxon time period, they were trying to find a way to more easily convert over the pagans to Christianity, because they were just so steeped in their beliefs that it was very difficult to get them to take on new ones. So, for example, Halloween in the Catholic Church is, more specifically in Spanish-speaking countries that practice Catholicism, you have Dia de los Muertos, which lasts for 3 days. Yes. So you have the Day of the Dead, which respects children, elders, and friends. And what's a lot of the symbolism there? Skeletons and death and creepy stuff. So Halloween as we know it today has actually been, what's the word I'm looking for? Commercialized. There we go. It has been commercialized by Christianity. So originally it was seen as, okay, All Hallows Eve into All Halloween was the veil between the worlds, where it's the thinnest, where you can communicate with the dead. Didn't sit well with the Christian church. So they made it all about fun stuff, like going door to door and getting treats, or performing tricks on the houses that didn't give you those treats. And history come down to now, more details in between, obviously, and you have what we know as the trick-or-treating that we have today, and carving pumpkins and stuff like that. You actually didn't used to carve pumpkins, you carved turnips. Another good one that overlaps is Easter. So a lot of the symbolism in Easter that you see has its roots in paganism. So bunnies and chicks for Christianity are used to symbolize rebirth and innocence. Well, what else are bunnies known for? Reproducing very, very quickly. So Easter was actually a fertility holiday based on the goddess Ostara, I believe her name was. And it was for females, for fertility blessings, to become pregnant, which makes me laugh very much, because I'm just thinking, okay, we have church services on Easter and Easter egg hunts and the rebirth of Jesus Christ and all of that, and it's all based on fertility rituals. And then probably the third biggest one would be Christmas. So there's two different types that were being covered up at that point. So with the Roman area of the world, you had Saturnalia, which was this huge festival of drinking and eating and merriment, and just, you weren't held back by inhibitions like you normally would be in a regular society during that time. And then you also have Yule, which was celebrated by the pagans, for mostly European area, Germany, that kind of stuff. So some remnants of paganism that we get from that are, some people will put a Yule log in their fireplace. That has its origin steeped in paganism. Partying, Christmas trees. Christmas trees are very pagan. Prior to the Christian Reformation of pagans into Christianity, Christmas trees weren't a thing. The reason that pagans brought them in at that time was to bring nature inside and life inside their homes. So there's just like the small little details that have been left over from years and years of change that you can still see today. And then Tina asked me in private chat, it's my understanding that a lot of Christian holidays are based on pagan holidays. Yes. Because of transferring over to Christianity, because of the difficulty of getting people that steeped in that mysticism into a new religion. She also asked, how did my family respond to my choices? So my mom has always been extremely supportive of whatever decisions I make. She has very much always touted, be independent, don't let your parents' decisions be your own, which I've always appreciated. And my dad has tried to be that way, but dad grew up in a very strictly Christian household. I don't know if you guys will get this reference, but mom pot kettle, kind of backwoods hillbilly kind of feel. That's what we call my grandparents, is mom pot kettle. Anywho, so did holiday connection make it easier? Yes and no. I kind of just keep it to myself. It's just easier that way. I know a lot of it just has to do with how my parents were raised and how my grandparents were raised, and I attribute it to that because it's hard to change old habits and it's hard to change old thought processes. So I've just found that it's easier to keep it to myself.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, Justin, how does interpretation of belief, how do you think that affects your historical answers? Because there is this idea, but then, like you said, it's not necessarily the reality. Or is it just easier to grab onto this position rather than challenging application?
Yeah, great question. Basically, the congruence or lack of congruence between belief and ideology per se, right? Or our politics. Yeah, unfortunately, it shows us how weak faith is, right? It's not determinative, at least for North Americans. It's not a determinative factor, but everyone thinks it is, which is why it works so well. So a president is a man of faith. What does that even mean, right? But we all say, well, that's good. Faith in what, you know? So I think, yeah, we really don't, our beliefs are conceptual. And when I hear belief, growing up, I think of like, give me a list of things that I can't prove, and I'll just say, yep, those are true. Like, that's it. That's what but faith or belief, etymologically, meaning where the word comes from, has to do with love and desire. Think of that. Like that moment that person walks in the room and your heart drops, that's belief. So I knew without knowing. And I've been rereading Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, and these intuitive moments when you know someone before. In fact, you shouldn't get to know them more. Like it'd be better to interview people for like 2 minutes and on the phone if you need it, right? But never in person, because it throws you off and all things. But to trust our intuitions. The other, what spontaneously, I can think of no faith tradition. This is historically speaking. And this is also the Father, Terra, and Bob. There is no faith tradition that I know of that believed that a poor person was valuable as such. Literally, right? Like Aristotle doesn't think that. Your great Advaita Vedanta Hindu traditions, there's implications for karma. In Jewish tradition, there's the claim for justice, but nowhere do you say, literally, they discovered the poor. That's the greatest revolution in human history, as far as I'm concerned, is the discovery of the poor person and seeing their value. Not only that, to go a step further to say, that's literally God. What Christians in the United States don't realize is that if Christ did return right now, they might be the people that are prosecuted. Think of that. Now that is what Revelation is about. So yeah, I don't think politics and religion are very closely related in many minds, because it's very clear. If people believed, they wouldn't let the poor go hungry.
other questions or comments? Well, thank you all for joining, whether in person or on Zoom. It's such a gift to be together in this weird and wonderful way. I do want to say that later on this afternoon, probably you will get an email with an evaluation form. The evaluation form not only helps us to create more and better events for you, but it's also a part of our grant reporting responsibility. So you'll be helping us to report back for that and potentially be eligible for more money. So thank you for responding to that as soon as you can. And thank you all for coming to this, our last Faith and Belief Luncheon of the semester. We hope you'll join us again next semester. We'll announce what those are once we know. And have a great rest of the week and good luck through this last week in person and into finals. So take care, everyone. Bye, friends.
Thank you.